Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Despite all the positives going around about the reveal of Modern Warfare 3 that happened yesterday, Scump definitely still has his concerns about certain elements of the game. Hard points on some of these Modern Warfare 2 original maps will raise some questions. There has been some talk as well about even different game modes that we might want to bring into the fray instead, but also questions about some of the equipment in the title and the amount of gentlemen's agreements we might have to see the pros come up with. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. Quickly wanted to mention we haven't seen, at least as of recording, any big roster confirmations over the last few days. We have probably been expecting something from Rocker, something from certainly Los Angeles Thieves, maybe from Surge. We think these teams know what they're doing. There was some talk on the flank that LA Gorillas don't really have anything locked in yet and they might take their time. The rumour is Clay attach +2, and that might be what they're planning to try, but it's far from sure, and they're probably going to wait a few months just so they have to pay less salaries. Does seem like LA Gorillas are kind of going the Paris Legion route, or Vegas Legion, apologies, route of, spending as least money as possible, and that's the same that Vegas and London will do. So we'll get some rumours, I'm sure, over time on that one. Nice shot here from JurNii, but I'm expecting something to be confirmed from some of these rosters in relatively short order. There's also this from Clay. We saw a little while ago now that I think Ludwig was trying to talk to Scump about getting him to come out here for the world's greatest gamer competition that he's doing, and I don't know if Scump could attend, or we don't really know anything on this, but Clay is going, so this is going to be cool, because Clay I think is definitely in the conversation, one of the best at different games in the COD scene, absolute veteran, so hopefully this will be cool, and hopefully he does rather well and puts on a show for the COD competitive scene if he is our only representative, let's say, at the event that Ludwig is putting on there. And speaking of Clay, I thought this was quite an interesting idea as well, as to whether the CDL should do some sort of official Hall of Fame, like, and as Brian Stat says, you know, players, coaches, casters, all eligible. I think even additionally to that, you've got to think guys like, obviously in former players category, you'd think guys like Nature, of course, should be in here, but even people like Hex or like Adam Apicella or something like that, people that are really influential in building the esport to what it is, I think they would be, they could be inducted into this Hall of Fame. Now, the COD League might not even exist in a couple of years, so I don't know if it's the best idea to start it now, but, I agree with Brian Sat to be a nice, like, annual event to do when you have, like, you open up the Hall of Fame, you have some people inducted in, and then every year you put in an additional couple of players or legends of the scene, and I know that people are saying, oh, well, if you did 10 to start and then 3 additional every year, you'd run out of players quickly. I'm kind of inclined to agree, but, still, you've got to start somewhere. Scump, Crim, Formal Karma, like Aches, obviously Nadeshot, and, Clay, so many options you could start with. And I think it would be a good idea to see something like this, to be fair. Nadeshot as well actually gave his comments on at the MWIII rumours and says, like, did Sledgehammer actually just give us everything we've been asking for? And there hasn't really been much that's been confirmed that people aren't happy with. There's some people that are on either side of the map debate or the health debate and stuff like this, and there's some complaints that people have, and of course that'll be the case. And they will need to change things over time to make the game as good as it can be. But generally, people are really satisfied with what we are seeing right here. And aBeZy was obviously watching the trailer last night and experiencing the same thing. Now, Scump also was watching the trailer and was watching JGod's analysis and reaction to playing the game himself, and was, definitely buying into some of the optimism around this game. But there are some questions, and the big one really for me is how these maps are going to work on the game modes. It's rather rare that before the game launches, we know exactly what the maps are going to be with the game. Sometimes there's rumors about what the map names are going to be, and we see like a few weeks before the game launches a list of map names, and then we think, oh, could this one be a throwback map of this one and all this? But it's very rare you go into a title knowing what your options are going to be for playing the game this season. And based on what we saw earlier today, these 16 MW2 maps are going to launch with the game. There will be other maps added over time, and it's quite possible they bring back some MW3 throwback maps as well at some point in the cycle. But by the time, sometimes that will happen after the competitive season is over. So this is what we have to rely on. There are a few maps here, like there's some of these maps that aren't going to be played. The likes of Wasteland and I forget, is this Afghan, or you've got Derail, and obviously Rust is going to be playing in competitive rights. So there's a lot of these maps that just aren't relevant, like Estates, right? Favela maybe is, some people have tried to make it viable. I'm not sure that it necessarily is. Is this Sub-Base? So there's a lot of maps that just aren't going to be played. Quarry is this one, right? So, yeah, damn, it's all coming back to me now, despite having never really played this game. But the likes of Invasion, Karachi, obviously you've got Terminal here as well, High Rise, and Scrapyard. Those are all maps that could well be viable and played. The question is, is, do they work for Hardpoint? We know for Search and Destroy, it's possible, and I think they will work okay for Search. We know that CTF is possible as well. We did hear the thoughts and makes on the flank, though, that maps like Terminal and others, you had to kind of set up a spawn trap to even get the flag out. So, you know, it might not play great, but still, the maps are there, the spawns, they should know how to make them work, so it should be viable. Mess around with the respawn delay and these type of things. Capture the flag will be okay, I think. Control, I don't know, but the Hardpoint, to me, that is the core of Call of Duty. Hardpoint is my favorite game mode in COD. I know that some people have said over time, I'll just make it Search and Destroy only. That would just make us such a B-Tech version of Counter-Strike that I just don't want to even go there. Hardpoint, I think, is just such a good game mode that Trek came up with that separates COD from other esports, in my opinion. I want Hardpoint to work, and it needs to stay, absolutely. And Hardpoint will be in the competitive rotation, I'm sure, but is it going to work on these maps? My perception is that it's worked on some of the absolutely atrocious maps that we've been delivered the last few years by Infinity Ward and others, including Censure, but to be fair, during the Vanguard season, apart from Tuscan, which was pretty good, then I think we can make it work on these maps, let's be honest. They might play a bit too fast, it might not be perfect, but I'm sure we can find a way to make it work. And we also do have, Tactical Academy did find out some of the Hardpoint locations that were used on this is Scrapyard, right? So this is what some developers have come up with in terms of like on mobile and stuff like this, like other games. So we've got this version. This is High Rise from Advanced Warfare, actually, with how they had this one set up. So obviously back in the day they had to come up with some sort of rotation. They might change it, of course, but this is what they did back then. And you know, it wasn't played in competitive, I don't believe, in Hardpoint at the very least, but it could have been viable. And this was Infinite Warfare's Terminal, what they did back then. I think that version of Scrapyard I showed was actually MW, but this is what they did for Terminal Hardpoint rotations. So it might need to work, but still, I think it's quite possible to make it happen, to be fair. Scump gave lots of thoughts on this, especially though on this field upgrade that JGod mentions, that you chuck it down on the objective and it just does all the work for you. It's kind of like the wingman guy from Valorant is coming to COD.
I'm playing Terminal? They threw us boat cage a few years ago and now I'm on Terminal? This is great. How do we think Hardpoint's going to play on this? On these maps? I'm actually very curious to see how they're going to play on these maps. Because, like, so, I mean, we just know, we know how, like, these maps play in the other game modes, like Demolition, CTF, Search and Destroy, all that good stuff, TDM, all that shit. I wonder how they're going to play, A, with the new movement speed and new movement mechanics, and B, with some of the new game modes. I'm curious. Doors on the OG maps. Oh, dude. If they put doors on some of the OG maps, I'm actually going to be mad. Like, if they put doors on fucking High Rise and shit, I'll actually be mad. But I don't think there's going to be doors. If, dude, like, imagine them sitting in the studio or whatever. I mean, there's no way. They're sitting there at the conference table, like, if we put doors in, they were going to lose their shit. If we put doors on High Rise, can you imagine the public outlash? People would be freaking out, dude.
So all interact. I think there was one where, like, if you're more of a solo player, it probably helps you run. You can throw it on the objective, and it will actually start capturing the objective for you. So if maybe you have team.
The fuck did he just say? They got something that you can throw on the objective, and it plays the obs for you? No, that's getting GA day one.
Teammates
you kidding me? That's getting GA.
But when it comes to a new feature that they've added, it's called the tactical stance. And this is kind of like a weird halfway stance that allows you to not be fully aimed down sight and not in the hip fire. It's kind of halfway in between. Almost kind of like what we had in Vanguard, where you can do like the blind fire, but it's more like you're able to move around in that weird ADS animation, so that you'll be able to maybe utilize that to move faster. Like maybe if you're working a stairway, we have to actually play with that a little bit more to kind of figure out how viable or how broken that's going to be.
I mean, that
Warzone.
That back part all sounded good. All the movement shit. I mean, it's gonna be like, it's gonna be crazy, but if executed properly, I think that all that movement shit's going to be dope. Yeah, rip controllers. Yeah, I'm going to be going through controllers like they're running out of style, dude. But all that stuff sounds cool. Being able to shoot while sliding, being able to aim in while sliding. He did say that you needed a piece of gear for that. Stalker's coming back, so obviously increased strafe speed there. All that stuff sounds pretty cool. Again, it has to be executed properly, but it all sounds pretty cool.
So there was some interesting thoughts though, especially because some have said, well, you know, Demolition was played on these maps back in the day. Headquarters was played on these maps back in the day. If Hardpoint really doesn't work on these maps, which I think that it will be fine. Hardpoint's such a good game mode. We've made it work on some terrible maps. It'll be fine. But even if it really doesn't, there are going to be some alternatives. If Sledgehammer put those old school game modes in the game, you know, I think we're going to be okay for maps and modes this year. I'm not too concerned about that, to be fair. And at least 16 maps gives us some options there. Even if, like, some of the maps are terrible and we have to play Favela, it might not be great, but whatever. At least we've got more options to start with than we've had in most recent games where we have, like, 10 maps and we have to try and get down to, like, 4 or even 3 for certain game modes because so many of them are so bad. But, yeah, this idea of, like, the wingman guy, you chuck him down to the objective and capture it for you, I think that it will be Gentleman's Agreemented if this does exist. Gentleman's Agreements, if you guys aren't familiar in COD, is like things that are not banned by the official rule set. So the rule set will ban out UAVs and stuff. They're not allowed in competitive. And there's a lot of like C4s or whatever. They get banned straight up because there's no point the pros playing with it because the game is better to watch and to play without some of those things in the title. But other things, the pros agree between them that, you know what, this is technically allowed in the rules, like shotguns have been the case in the past, but you know what, we won't actually play with them because we think the game's better to play and to watch without it. It might be the case with this field upgrade. It might just be banned in the rule set and there's no need for a gentleman's agreement, but otherwise I don't think the pros are going to be using this. But, you know, who knows? Maybe there's some validity to that. Imagine you were trying to, you know, let's say a hardpoint game and there's someone in the hardpoint, but actually there's nobody in the hardpoint on their team. They've just put the field upgrade down in the point and they're roaming around the hill, and yet, you know, I don't know, it'd be really interesting if that was the case. I don't think it'd be good for competitive, but it at least is an option and one thing to consider. So Scum had some good thoughts on it, I thought. I know there has been some concern about the potential return of doors. We know that Infinity Ward have done that before with Crash. They brought it back from COD 4. They chucked doors all over it. I don't think they're going to do that with these titles. As Scump said, like, there would be so much backlash if that was to be the case, and they were to just kind of, like, ruin and tamper with these old maps by doing those things. So I don't expect that to be the case, but, yeah, I don't know. We've got to keep our hopes up. It's going to be a good title. Scump seems optimistic. Most of the players that played the game seem optimistic. Okay, all they've said really so far on socials is, oh, thanks, Sledgehammer, for inviting me, and it was a great, fun experience. They, of course, say that every single year, but it seems like there's a lot of more optimism here from the pros than we've had in previous times. And, you know, Scump obviously just a few weeks ago was saying that he was 80% sure he wanted to come back and play for the upcoming year, but he wasn't super 100% convinced, so he decided not to. But, you know, you gotta think, if this year's game is good and then next year's game is a tryout game, Scump's itch to compete might well be back there again. Same with Methods and other players in this situation. But very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.